Grab a chair. And first I want to thank you all for coming out on this beautiful day. They say March comes in like a lion, goes out like a lamb. Let's hope this is a lion. Today we have two delegates from Wisconsin Conservation Congress, Marcell Wieloch, Mike Lane. I don't know, you have a brother Ron?
Pardon?
Do you have a brother Ron?
No.
For some reason you look like a Ron.
No. I'll be Ron today, okay?
Anyhow, I want to welcome Marcell and Mike for coming out and share their experience, and they'll be open up for any questions and have some coffee, have some donuts, and thank you Marcell and Mike for coming.
Okay. As he said, I'm Marcell Wieloch. Most of you know me, I know. I've been in the Congress for a little over 20 years now. I've been up in Marathon County here since 2002, and I've been the county chairman since about 2004. So, and Mike has been on for now 5 years? About 5 years. So, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. The Conservation Congress Creed states as follows: let us work together to properly manage and wisely use our natural resources, our land, our air, our water, our forests, and wildlife, so that we may live in harmony with the earth, its creatures, now and forevermore. Okay? That's how it starts off. And the Congress was created in 1934 by the Wisconsin Conservation Commission, which was the pre-runner of the Wisconsin, or the Natural Resources Board. That's what it used to be called back then. Its purpose is to provide an avenue for input and exchange concerning conservation issues of all kinds. Prior to 1937, all fees, seasons, bag limits, and regulations were established by the state legislature. It was after that the natural resources started taking over that area. We are now a liaison between the DNR, the Natural Resources Board, and the sportsmen of the state of Wisconsin. In our case, we work with the sportsmen and women of the county. In 1972, Governor Patrick Lucy signed legislation that legally founded the Wisconsin Conservation Congress. Before that, it was a body that was used with the Natural Resources Board, but it wasn't really legally in the state. And in 1972, by statute 15.384, it became legal. And the Congress now has input on all matters that come between the Natural Resources Board. Yes?
What do you mean by legal? I mean, what is the difference before it became legal?
Before, it was just like almost like an advisory committee that states once he signed that. So they cannot run any kind of meeting or anything without representation from the Congress. And hopefully that representation is formed by information that trickles down from you guys, to us guys, to them. Okay? So all banks, or all books and records are kept independent of the DNR. We are our own identity and just work with them. No other state in the United States has a Conservation Congress, except Wisconsin. We're very unique that way. A lot of states that are really looking at it. Every so often when I'm in a meeting, I hear some feedback that other states are looking at how we're formed, what we do, and how we work in conjunction with the legislature and the DNR and the Natural Resources Board. So a lot of people have been looking at us, but nobody else has it right now. So the Congress is an independent organization of Wisconsin citizens elected in their own counties to serve the citizenry of each county. Individual attendance in the spring hearing, which is the second Monday in April, elect representatives. Every April there are 2 representatives that are either re-elected or elected. We have 5 delegates in the county, and like I say, every year we have an election for 2 of them. They're kind of staggered so that there's always 2 of them that are up for re-election. So, and the hearings are held the same Monday in every county at the same time, which is 7 o'clock. There's usually in the state, there's usually from 5 to 10,000 people in attendance, which makes this the largest state-held meeting ever, or any place. So And even though we have that many people come to these counties, like our county is usually, unless there's a controversial topic like mourning doves or feral cats or something, we usually average right around 130 people, I think, or somewhere right in there. And when you take that in all these counties and you say you got a good turnout of 10,000 people, it's really a short number when you consider that hunters opening day are out there for between 500 and 600,000 hunters. Opening day of fishing season, everybody knows when that is. And I would hardly venture to say how many people mark that on their calendar, much less the hikers and the bird watchers and anybody else. So we would like to do whatever we can to get that number up. I personally don't think that anybody who hunts or fishes or walks or watches birds or whatever should not have the second Monday in April circled and attend that meeting. I know there's a lot of excuses for not to. That people say it goes too late, I got to work the next day. It's really not. It used to be that it would have to read every question and then discuss it, and then it would drag on and go really late. Now we only read the questions that are pertinent to our county, unless a question is there for, say, Lincoln County and Herb fishes or hunts in Lincoln County, so he wants to have that question discussed. That's your prerogative to bring that up then. Otherwise, we keep them moving. We try to get out of there, say by 10 o'clock. And I know that even if you're working the next day, that's not too late to get out of there. And hopefully we can get more people coming to these meetings. And the more people that are there, it's like anything else. The more input we have, the more information we have, the better we are equipped to work with the DNR or the natural resources when we go to a meeting down in Madison. So if everybody could come to that meeting and bring a friend, I'd greet you at the door with a big smile and say thank you. As any organization, the Congress is organized and governed by its established code of procedure and its bylaws under Robert's Rules of Order, which every open meeting is controlled by. The Code of Procedure states that there are policies and procedures that are intended to guide the operation and organization of the Congress. It is published for the guidance of individual delegates to allow the orderly transaction of business and to ensure that all citizens of Wisconsin have an opportunity to be heard. The Congress conducts 4 meetings a year. We have the spring hearing, of course, which I just mentioned, the second Monday in April. Usually in May, like the second weekend in May, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we have our national or our state convention, our annual convention. And at that time, any questions that were brought up at that April meeting or any resolutions, which U.S. citizens can pencil down a resolution and be voted on, those resolutions or spring questions are covered by that meeting in our national convention meeting, and they're voted on to see if they're going to be passed on or not. That's one of the meetings. The second meeting, the first one is the state or the April hearing. The second one is that state convention. The third and the fourth meetings are usually district meetings. All the counties are divided into 11 districts, and each district has a meeting like in March. In fact, ours is week after next. And you have this spring meeting to go over the book that's going to be covered with all the questions at the April hearing. We go over that, make sure that everybody doesn't have any questions about any of the questions that are going to be covered. Just how it's going to be held, what you have to do, what you have to know to prepare for this spring hearing meeting in April. Then we have another one, usually in August, and that's just kind of to recap the whole year and what we have to cover or be aware of that happened or is coming down the pipe for next year. Those 4 meetings are set up by the Congress. After that, you might, as a delegate, you might be required to attend a committee meeting if you sign up for a committee. There are like right around 20 different committees that are covered by the Congress. They range from bear, big game, endangered species. The whole state, all the counties are divided into 11 districts. And then each district votes at the annual meeting for 2 representatives on that district. And these become, they're now called the District Leadership Council. It used to be the Executive Council, but now they changed that because there was too much confusion with the Executive Committee. So, and the Executive Committee is the Chair, Vice Chair, Secretary, Outreach and Public Relations Coordinator, and a historian. They're the guys who rule our Congress. So, as a delegate to the Wisconsin Conservation Congress, your actions are primarily governed by the Congress Code of Procedure. So that when appearing in public, like now, if I refer to myself as a conservation delegate, I cannot voice my opinion on anything other than what the Congress supports. If I come up to you and say, well, the Congress says this, but I don't believe in it, as I'm standing here, I can be disciplined or dropped from the Congress. So you're pretty strict about that. And as a county delegate, you will represent your county on all matters that are under the jurisdiction of the Natural Resources Board, which governs the Wisconsin DNR. Your responsibilities include an obligation to represent your county's directive and wishes on all stated resources and environmental issues. You never vote against your Congress. That's our mantra. If we go to the April meeting and you guys all vote to pass this thing and I don't like it, when I go to the annual meeting, it's my duty to vote as the county voted. I think in all the years I've been in the Congress, there was one time that at the meeting we voted against the county, and that was because some information had come through that says if this goes, it won't be, or passed by the legislature that some information came in that will not affect that or change it without our having any say to it. So that was one time that I can remember that we voted against what the county voted. Otherwise, and I know other counties do it, they're a little lax on that, but I always tell the guys at the meeting, I say, however the county voted, we're voting, whether we like it or not. So that's the thing that I live by. I believe in my word, and that's what I go by. So the next thing we need to do is to share, discuss, and disseminate information, materials, and the directions that we obtain from the state or from the Natural Resources Board or the DNR. And a lot of times I know we've sat around here, you guys have asked questions, and I've passed on information that I've gotten from that. So it's our duty, and every meeting we go to, I go to a lot of different meetings, sportsmen's meetings, different county meetings and whatnot, and I'll always pass on any information that's pertinent to the sportsmen and women of the state, because it's our job. That's what we're supposed to do. So, and then we also have to attend all Congress functions, as I stated, the meetings previously. It's appointed to a study committee. It's our duty to do whatever we can to listen to the questions that were passed and discuss them and see if they're worthy to be passed on to the DNR for a rule change or what. So, and if for any reason you're unable to attend any of these meetings, it's your duty to contact either the county chair or the district chair to let them know. Because again, you miss one meeting, and we brought that up. In fact, I brought that up at our board of directors meeting here at the club. We got to record who's there and who's not, who's excused and who's not. Because here, if you miss a meeting and you're not excused, you might not be on the Congress the next year. So they're pretty strict about that. So the only other thing that I have business cards printed up for the Congress, since I've been on it for so many years. And on the back of this business card is our mission statement as the Congress. And the mission statement reads, the Wisconsin Conservation Congress is the only advisory body in the state where citizens of Wisconsin elect delegates to represent their interests in natural resources, both local and statewide, by working with the Natural Resources Board and the Department of Natural Resources to effectively manage Wisconsin's greatest asset, our abundant natural resources for present and future generations to enjoy. So that kind of brings it into a nutshell. So if you have any questions, Paul?
How are you guys funded?
We are funded, the only fundraiser we have is at this this annual convention. Every county brings prizes, and we have like a silent auction. And that is basically the only thing we have unless somebody gives donations to it. We use that well, most of this is all volunteer work, you know. We aren't paying our people to be there. We're there because we care about the natural resources and the people that we're representing. So that's the only thing that we use for funding, and that pays for meeting rooms, whatever, you know. We have a youth congress, and we use a couple of youth organizations, and that pays for that also. So that answer your question?
Once you turn your recommendations over to the DNR, are you out of it? I mean, that's it?
Not really, because if you come, say, and you wrote up a resolution next month, or in April, we would vote on that resolution that night. If it passed in Marathon County, as I said, it will go to the annual convention in May. And the whole county, the floor will vote on it then. If it passes there, it gets sent to one of these study committees to study the pros and cons, the goods and bads, or whatever. And if it passes those committees, then it goes to the Natural Resources Board, and it can come through as a question the following year. So if you wrote up something this year, possibly the third year it would be voted on as a DNR question and be passed then.
But what about the questions that are, say, last year's questions, and they're already to the DNR?
Those will,
Are they out of your hands then?
they're out of our hands to the point that they will go to the DNR study committees and either come back as a rule change next year, or if it's a good one, it will be implemented in the following year in the rule book.
What kind of track record do you guys have as far as the DNR board or the legislature following your recommendation?
We have a pretty good track record on that. There are very few times that the DNR will not support anything that comes down. Every once in a while we have it where we say, we raise heck the next year because we say, hey, it passed in the state, why is it not on the books? So there are a few times for their own reasons, whether it's something to do with lakes or something, and according to their studies or whatever, they're not going to implement it now, then they won't support it. But otherwise, we have a very good track record about them listening to us and supporting it, which makes us very unique, and like I said before, being a unique thing in the state, being the only one in the state who has this, for in all the states. George?
I've been going to the meetings since the early 60s and was on the Congress back then too for a number of years. But the biggest thing I hear for people going to the meetings is that no matter what we do, they don't follow them anyway. And I'll tell you, when you go back and you look at the deer numbers and stuff, we could vote that we wanted a certain number of deer numbers in Lincoln County, and they all change them anyway, and that's why the people get so damn upset and they don't come to the meetings anymore. And so I don't know, the track record from at least the perspective of the people, they feel that they're not being listened to, and that's why they don't go to meetings.
And a lot of the things on the deer committee, Mike will cover as soon as I'm done here, because that is being changed with the fact that we now have the citizens deer advisory committees, the CDAC committees, and we're trying to make that change so that we have more control over it, and they are starting to listen to it. In fact, I don't think this last year they changed one county from all the recommendations that the counties came in. They didn't change any of them. So they are listening to it, they're watching what's happening in the counties right now. And as far as the meetings, yeah, one of the complaints was that the meetings dragged on with a lot of things. Well, since I've been on the chairman of the county, me and a lot of other, even the DNR people, really regulate the meetings as good as we possibly can. And the same thing keeps coming up, we'll call a question and move on to the next one.
Yeah, we cut ours way down in Lincoln County too. You get
Yep, everybody's trying it, so we get all within 3 hours.
Question out of our area and nobody fishes it or whatever, we just pass it. But now, is every one of them CDACs, are they supposed to have somebody, a Conservation Congress guy on them?
Absolutely, the Conservation Congress is running it. We have to have a member of the Congress as a chairman, and then a member of the Congress as an alternate chair, who also takes the meeting. In our case, Mike is the chairman of our CDAC committee. I'm the alternate chair. So I don't actually have, being the two of us on that committee, I don't have a vote on that committee. I take minutes and record what's going on there, and if Mike can't make it, then I run the meetings.
Who else sits on that committee in Marion County?
Mike will cover that all. Yeah.
Because like in Maryland, it seems like it's all the mayor and then they got a forester there and an agricultural guy and I assume there might be a Conservation Congress guy there, but
You can know for a fact.
are they supposed to listen to the people that's out in the audience or
And like I say, Mike will cover that.
well, our group seems like they just they do what they want to do and don't listen to anybody else. Is that the way it's supposed to work? Okay.
Anybody else?
Does, once you make your recommendations, does then you just have to go through the legislature or anything, or?
Well, to a point, yes. And like I said, he'll cover it. So if there's any other questions on Congress,
Decided that they didn't want to discuss the issue that the crossbow season is too long in relation to the other season. What do you do then?
that is a real hard question to answer because it does happen. For a while there, they used to have a real big control over what happened at these study committee meetings, and because they would just get the question, read the question, and vote on it. Now, what everybody is trying to do is, if you put a question in there, and I'm sure they did that last year too, they notify you so that you can be there, and you get the feedback from that. I'm not exactly sure what the recourse of that would be. It used to be in the old days, if you couldn't get it through the Congress, you'd go to your legislature, which in a way is good because they could pass it, but in a way it's also bad because if I go to the legislature with a question that I feel is pertinent, and I'm a buddy of his, so he puts it up to the legislature and they pass it, now it's done without the input of all the citizens in the county, and you don't really have the proper information. So the only thing we can do is to get that complaint from there, turn it back into the Congress so that we get the executive committee getting on that, or so that we bring that up at the convention and voice it to all the people there. So. Anybody else? If not, thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to Mike for the CDAC committee. I've got cards here if anybody would want a business card, help yourself. So.
A little follow-up to what Marcell just went through. This is the book that's published every year when we go to the convention. This has all of the resolutions from every county that has been put into that spring hearing. So this year, when we have our spring hearing here in Marathon County in April, each county is going to be putting in resolutions from the citizens. Once those resolutions are all gathered, sent into the state, Conservation Congress puts it together into a book like this. Now, I have several different tabs on here. Some of them show that it's listed by...
I'll answer them, otherwise I'll... Mike.
What if you have a big game study committee that doesn't want to listen to the people? Last year we had 4 resolutions from 4 different counties passed. The big game study committee
my committee, so if you want to see if there's something in big game, you can look right up under the committee. You look on the side, it'll say big game committee, or it'll say environmental or waterfall or whatever. Some of them are listed by the title. If the title happens to start as eliminate, then it'll be under E, so it's the alphabetical order. Let's see what else we got here. And there's also resolutions by county. And I did put on the side here, there's a tab with 2 resolutions from last year that went to Marion County. One, I believe, was by Mike Russ, and I don't remember who the other one was. In fact, the other one I didn't even read the guy's name. But basically, the resolutions are numbered. There's 6 digits on those numbers. The first 2 digits tell which county it is, and it goes alphabetical order. County being number 1. Marathon County happens to be under MS 37. The second two numbers are 01, which is the first resolution that was handed in that night. 02 is the second resolution that's handed in. That's just so we can differentiate between the different resolutions to assign a number. And the last two numbers are the year that the resolution was handed in. And you can see what the results are. If it went to big game committee, it was either passed or if it was voted down in the county, they put no action. If it happens to be something that's associated with a big game committee, it'll say forwarded to big game committee, and then it's voted on there. And another little addition to that, yes, things do get to different committees, and they end up getting voted out of the committee. What we put in as a resolution in Marathon County may not be popular in Milwaukee County, it may not be popular in Bayfield County. Each of those counties gets a chance to vote on that. If there happens, and one of the things you'll see here is one author, say in Dane County, will decide, okay, like last year, they wanted to eliminate coyote hunting with hounds. So they emailed the same resolution to all of their friends in 4 different counties, and the same resolution was put through by different authors in each different county, trying to get enough votes against it so that it would get killed in when it got to committee. But anyway, I'll pass this around. Everybody can take a look at it. If you have questions on it after a while, ask me those or ask Marcell about it. Now, my presentation is going to be on the CDAC. And we start out with, what is CDAC? The CDAC is the County Deer Advisory Council. And this is a council or a committee, actually, what I call it. It's active in every county in the state except Menominee County. And the reason is, for Menominee County, is they have their own tribal rules over there as far as deer populations and stuff, so they don't even have an active CDAC there. The process resulted from the deer trustee meetings. Everyone remember this about, 3, 4, 5 years ago, somewhere in there. These were the Dr. Deer meetings that were held throughout the state. Anyone that did not attend those meetings probably didn't find out how this got started. And I believe that the CDAC process came from those meetings. Those were some of the suggestions that were made. The biggest thing, and then I'm kind of guessing on this because I didn't attend the meetings either, but at that time, and yet at this time, people just are not comfortable with what the DNR's deer numbers were. They didn't believe them. And I'm guessing there's probably a substantial amount of people in this room that feel the same exact way. So what they did then is they, instead of going by their numbers, by the kill numbers, sex age kill numbers, or by what the local biologist had, they decided, okay, instead of going to numbers, what we're going to do is we're going to go to, do we want to increase our population, decrease the population, or do we want to maintain the population as what it is? So they decided to come up with these councils. I don't know exactly who it was that came up with the idea that we're going to have agriculture and transportation and all of these different representatives on there. I believe it possibly may have come out of those meetings and possibly in coordination with the big game department, possibly maybe even with the Conservation Congress. I don't know where it came from. All I know is the Conservation Congress leaders, while working with the DNR and the big game committee, or big game department, they volunteered that the DNR doesn't have enough people to run these meetings in every county. So they said, okay, the Congress is going to run the meetings. We're going to supply the people. We're going to pick out of the 5 delegates that we have in each county. We're going to have 2 of the people that are running. Marcell explained, chairman and the alternate chairman. And 2 of our delegates weren't really interested in it. Other one was going to take it. Turned out he couldn't. So then it ended up on Marcell and myself. Okay, each council is allowed 7 stakeholders, and at one time they were allowed a tribal stakeholder, but the tribes said, no, we're not going to participate in any of the counties, so that one kind of was set on the side. The ones they have right now are, you can have one from the Hunt Club, or a Conservation Club, or even like the Boat Club here, you could have someone from there. One from agriculture, one from forestry, one from transportation, one from tourism, one from DMAP, which is something that also came out of the deer trustee meeting. DMAP basically is someone that enters into the DMAP program to regulate the population on their own private land. Marathon County, we have, I believe, 6 at this time. One from a hunt club, which is a representative from the Alder Sportsman Club. One from agriculture, one from forestry, and one from transportation. All 3 of those did not volunteer. They were volunteered as part of Marathon County government. The forestry guy, the transportation guy, and the soil and conservation guy were told by their bosses, you're going to represent Marathon County on those departments. Tourism, we have a representative from the Central Wisconsin Convention and Visitors Bureau. And urban, we just had a guy that volunteered that's from the Wausau area to represent Wausau area. There was no interest from the people who are enrolled in DMAP in Marathon County. There's only a handful of DMAP properties in Marathon County. None of them were interested in it. Marcell said myself and him are on there as the chairman and alternate chairman. Each of the council members here gets a vote. So anytime there's a question that comes up, they get a chance to vote. Unfortunately, I don't get a full vote. What I get is a vote to either make a tie or to break a tie. And this is something that was put forth by the Conservation Congress. I actually wrote a resolution to try and get it changed because I don't think it's fair. I don't believe that the Conservation Congress is getting a full vote there, but it didn't work out that way. But the one thing that I will say is that every one of the people that's on the Marathon County CDAC is a hunter. So you can feel at least a little bit comfortable that there's good representation from there. Okay, there also are 3 people from the DNR that attend each of the meetings. One is a local biologist. For the past year or so, we did not have a biologist in Marathon County, so we were borrowing one from down in Wood County, and she would come up. Now we do have a new biologist in Marathon County, so he'll attend there. There is someone from the DNR Forestry Department that attends the meetings, and there is a local warden that attends the meetings. They're there only as an advisory. They can't vote. They can't tell us how to vote. They answer questions. They give presentations on what the kill was last year, what the kill was the year before, how many tags did we sell, anything that the counselors need for information, they're there to supply that. They also supply a certain amount of advice as far as, if we do this, what's going to happen here, and if we don't do that, what are the results from that. Okay, now the process starts out as each CDAC will vote every 3 years, which will cover for the next 3 years, whether to increase, decrease, or maintain the deer population in the county. Okay, our first year, the Marathon County CDAC voted to maintain it as it was. So what we do then is it's regulated through antlerless tags, it's regulated through whatever type of seasons we want. Do we want a holiday hunt? Do we want an all antlerless hunt? That came up in Wapaka County, was very unpopular. I mean, there are a certain amount of things that we can do to try and regulate the population, keep the population, get it up, keep it down. Yes, Mike?
With the size of Marathon County, does this, the CDAC input and stuff actually match the size of the county? As far as the population, I mean, I'm sure the size of Marathon County populations in some areas have to be less or some more, especially with the private land.
Well, actually, the members that are on there don't really represent any type of area. I mean, you can have, like I said, we've got 3 on there that are from government. What do they represent? Well, they represent that particular thing that's agriculture for all of Marathon County, or it happens to be transportation for all of Marathon County. The Alder Sportsman's Club is probably one of the smaller clubs in the area. It was the only club that we could find that had someone that was interested in representing on the CDAC. Yes.
So if you've got, say for example, the agriculture representative, where are they getting their input from? Or are they just showing up and presenting their own opinion?
And that's a real valid question, because who controls what they do as far as the vote? I mean, right now, If I had to pick and choose, I would say those 3 people are going to be under the thumb of the Marathon County administrator. He's going to tell them what to do. In our case here in Marathon County, it doesn't work that way. These guys are all hunters. They do what's right. I've actually seen some of them vote probably against what their boss would ask for. But they did what was right for what we feel is right in Marathon County. I have a high level of confidence with people we have on there. I was real doubtful at first, especially when I saw the fact that we've got 3 people coming out of, being appointed out of government. But these are guys I trust. I wouldn't have any problems. But yes, that is an opportunity.
So have you guys, and the idea has been floated before, this idea of managing public land and private land differently?
We do.
And that's what your committee
Absolutely.
wants.
I'll get into how it's being done later, but that's part of the CDAC. That's part of the reason that they did this, so that the DNR was doing it county-wide or unit-wise when it was 57A and 62A and stuff, and then when they changed to counties, then they decided, okay, we're going to manage county-wide, but how are we going to do it on public land, how are we going to do it on private land? Well, that's part of it. That's some of the things that we do in here as far as controlling deer numbers. It doesn't always work exactly the way we want.
In addition to your question there, 2 of the people that Mike mentioned, the agricultural guy and the transportation guy, have come through to these meetings with very good and informative information from the people they work with. The agricultural guy gets his information from all the different organizations that he's involved in, farmers and feed co-ops and whatnot. The transportation guy is getting it from the truck drivers, the snowplow drivers, and everybody who's working, the road people, everybody who's working in the county. So each meeting we've had, those 2 guys come up with some very good information.
Plus, on top of that, they're also using their own personal experiences. When they come in there, they're saying, okay, this is what we did in our deer camp last year. This is what the group did down the road. And I know at least one of the members on there knew that some of the people that were attending from the public were not being completely truthful about what they were saying at the meetings that night, because he knew that they were shooting more or less antlerless than what the guy was saying. So, yes, Mike.
Mike, the breakdown of the committee, and I know it was determined right at the outset, but having forestry, which there are people in forestry that believe that 1 deer in Wisconsin is too many for their trees. Agriculture generally wants less deer. Transportation, I'm still never sure why they were on there, because they just pick up the deer, but I'm sure they'd like to pick up less. We have a pretty good situation here in Marathon County, but statewide, to me that's a problem, especially the fact that Conservation Congress only has 1 vote while you have 2 members on it. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and those are some of the points that I disagree with myself too. Is like I said, Marathon County, we work very good, and I believe it's because the people. It's not that we got somebody from forestry and agriculture, transportation, but it's the very people that we got from there that are dedicated deer hunters. They matter to me, but in other counties, especially in southern part of the state, there may not be someone from forestry. You may not be someone from a local hunt club if it's a smaller county. So then you have a disproportionate amount of votes within that committee.
And our situation could change.
Yes, it could.
That's what I'm saying.
And this year is the 3rd year, so if anybody decides to get off of there, who's going to replace them? What are they going to be like? My gut feeling is that the people that we have on there probably will stay on. And I do have a high level of confidence.
My concern is how are they using the data, or what are they using as data with deer kills, agriculture damage and all of that, to influence or to change or move or whatever decisions?
Right. Now, that's one of the things that the biologist will present. He'll present last year's kill. He'll present which way the kill is moving up or down. Is Marathon County, having a higher buck kill? Is there more of a buck kill with bull, or is the cross kill affecting it? All of this is handed out at that meeting. Basically, each counselor has to kind of pick and choose through it and as to what he believes coming to the meeting and give their public comment. On top of that, there is also a comment period, which I'll go through all the rest of that area too. But basically, it's the biologist's duty to give us the information that he has. We sort through that and see if we believe it or not. Or how do we want to, what do we want to do with it?
What does transportation do? Just count the deer field or road fields, or what is there?
Well, I'm not really sure why transportation was on it. Like I said, we didn't have a choice in
Yeah, I know.
each situation, the numbers were put in there. I suspect the reason is that car kills, we're getting too many car kills. Transportation should have the numbers to be able to tell us, we're having a hot spot, or, and the guy from transportation has noticed, he's got a couple spots, he said, where there's multiple collisions in that area, certain times of the year. He knows when they are, where they are. That's it. Why it was put on the council, I have no clue. Like I said, that was on there before I ever got a chance. It's never been explained to me why it was put on there either.
Well, I don't want you to feel like you're on the hot seat, but
Well, that's what I'm here for.
take a county like Marathon County, and I live on double land. In the last month, if you drive from Rib Mountain to Marathon City, you'll see 9 car-killed deer. Go up to Glandon and see how many car-killed deer you see on Highway G to Lincoln County or wherever you want to go. So you got a county this big. What is that transportation guy going to bring to the table when you're, oh yeah, Rib Mountain's a hot spot, there's a lot of deer there. That's all private land. Glandon's all public land, and there's no car kills up there. So, it's kind of interesting, and that begs his question, what's that guy bringing to the table?
He can only bring us information of what he sees and what gets reported. Is that a real lot within the determination each time? Probably not a real lot, but people care, and it's information that should be brought forward.
But in the example, so Rib Mountain, there's a lot more deer. They found that most people hunting in the area, so deer, not much. And now it's still all in the county, so on a county level, which way you're going? Well, from a transportation perspective, it's like, well, we're getting too many roadkill, but not everywhere. So you can't deal on a county level. You almost got to deal with sections within a county that you regulate. You can't regulate on a county level because there are areas that are far and few you don't see many deer at all. So
And the transportation representative tells us that every year.
He does.
Yeah, so that's why I'm telling you that I have a real high level of confidence in these guys. Is he knows that there's areas where there's a lot of deer kill, but yet he'll turn around and he'll vote with what the statistics say, what the public comment period says. During the discussion, more points will be brought out. So he doesn't base it just on, okay, we got a high car kill in Rib Mountain, or if we've got another one down by Shantytown or something like that. He looks big picture rather than small picture. Yes.
I'm from Lincoln County, and again, I want to go back to the citizen guy or the hunter like me, going to the meeting, and then they ask us to vote, or everybody to vote. Where does my voice get in there? Because when them guys voted, they didn't vote what we wanted out. There was maybe 30 people there. We voted, we wanted less tags. Overall, majority, by a big majority, was less tags overall. And then they ended up voting to keep it the same. Is the guy from the Sportsman's Club supposed to vote, use my vote, or is the forester going to use my vote, or none of them?
And to tell you the truth, I can't help you with that. Marathon County has been very good as far as not doing that. But yours isn't the first county that I've heard that they don't listen to us.
Well, what's the rule? I mean, what are they supposed to do?
Those that are on the council vote to represent who they're representing. If it's transportation, he votes to represent transportation. Is it his boss? I don't know. I can't tell them what to vote. In your Conservation Congress chairman, he can't tell them what to vote. But hopefully, if they get enough public comment saying, okay, we want to kill higher, we want less tags, they'll do it. And I'll find you how American County did it.
And the first thing before they voted, the DNR guy says, I want this many tags this year. I thought they weren't supposed to influence them.
Well, they still can present what they think, what they feel is right. But they don't get a vote in it, at least. There's that. If he comes out and says, I want more tags in this county, and everyone on their council says, okay, let's go ahead, do what he said, there's not much you can do about it. And I really wish there was, and I don't know how to go about getting it changed there.
But there's a DNR forester there, there's a DNR biologist, so do they get the vote on it?
No, they do not. They don't, the forest, the DNR biologist, the DNR forester, and the DNR warden do not get to vote on anything. They have
I
no,
don't think they're following the rules then.
yeah, they're following that rule anyway. Whether or not your council members are doing what the public is asking to do, that's another thing.
But he's going right down the list and asking everybody how they voted. And I'm sure the forester's in there and the biologist is in with their vote.
Who is he?
That was the guy that's running it.
Oh, okay. You were talking
I
about
don't
Forrester
know.
and DNR, I didn't want them to be going down in that.
No.
Okay.
Well, that's it. It's the chairman's duty to ask for the vote.
Yeah.
Is the chairman, is that a conservation Congress guy? It's supposed to be, or it is.
It is, and that's what I had mentioned before.
I gotta find that out.
The leadership is determined, the Conservation Congress leadership said that we're gonna have a chairman and an alternate chairman from each county. They're gonna run the meeting. Like I said, the thing that I didn't like was the fact that I only get to vote on something if it's tied or to make a tie. And not only that, I have no direction whatsoever. We have our spring Conservation Congress hearings. There's never been a question, and there won't be a question there, as to do we want to maintain, do we want to increase, or do we want to decrease? I can vote however I want. So it's quite possible that I could enter into a little collusion with someone else and do whatever I want. Basically, I pretty much have a pretty good idea that most of Marathon County wants the deer population to increase or maintain. So if it comes down to where I have a vote, that's probably the way I'm going to vote unless something substantially changes in the next couple of years. But I haven't gotten to the point where I'm going to need to vote on something here anyway. So let me get back here to the population goals may be met through the seasons, through antlerless quotas and tag allotments. Basically, Marathon County does it mostly through the antlerless quotas, the tags that are allotted by each county here. We'll give you some of the results here from the past couple of years. In 2016, the quota for Marathon County was determined to be 6,500. Now that particular number wasn't just grabbed out of space somewhere. This is what, looking at past harvests, became a bit of a problem when we went from the zones, 57A, 62A, going into a county-wide, because now you had 5 different zones all being wrapped in part into Marathon County. So what the biologist did is said, okay, for the first year or so, we're going to kind of have to take a guess at what we did as far as the kill before, what the quota was to get that kill, and we're talking about antlerless here, not about bucks, to try and keep the population at where we feel it is. So the recommendation at that time, it ended up as being 6,500 for the quota, and we went with the kill after that to determine whether we're going to change it. Now last year was 6,500 was the quota, 3,500 tags were being allotted to private lands. When you go to buy a deer license, whether it be archery or the rifle season, you have to have a mark down, you have to choose private land or public land for each of your antlerless tags, not for bucks. Those are statewide there. The quota was 3,500 for private lands and 0 for public lands. And the reason that they went with 0 for public lands, these are bonus tags. These are not the tags that, not the extra tag you get on your license, although you do have to determine for that tag also whether you want to go on public land or private land. But you have 2 different antlerless. The free one you get, which you have to say public or private, and the $12 over-the-counter one, which is public or private. The biologist looked at what the kill was for those 2 different tags, what the success rate was, and I think basically what we're looking at is you automatically get one with your license, bow or gun, whether you're going to use it or not. A lot of those tags were not used because the people didn't want to shoot the does. So the kill was much lower, the percentage success rate was lower. The people that want to go out and shoot does, which is, people understand that. If they're buying that $12 tag, it's much more likely they're going to use it. So the success rate was higher. And one of the biggest comments that we had was the lack of deer sightings, the lack of success on public lands. And this came from the people that came to the meetings and to the comment period, what was put on online. So they decided what we're going to do is make 0 for Marathon County for the $12 over-the-counter tags for private, for public land. Yet in the private land, there was 6,500 available. Now, I don't know what was sold, what was killed last year, but anyway, the year before last, in 2015, there was 3,375 that were allocated to the private lands, but there was only 2,308 that were sold. So if you don't even sell them all out, you can put that number as high as you want. You know, if you're only going to sell 2/3 of what you have available, you know, you're not going to be able to knock the population down on private lands, which is where public sentiment is where most of the deer were. But in that year, it was 450 were allowed on public lands, and all of those were sold out. So those are just from the last couple of years. What else did I get at here? Anyway, that's what we had for tags available. We'll have more input this year from the biologists as far as what the kill was last year, the free tags, the bonus tags, public, private, those things there. Yes?
Private tags, what are the egg tags? Are they considered part of a private tag, or are they included in that number?
I think egg tags are maybe included possibly within the quota, which is a higher number yet, but I don't think that the egg tags are listed in this what's sold here over the counter, because those are issued kind of on a separate basis. And for those of you that have ever gotten down into the southeast corner of Marathon County, we have one guy that comes to the meeting every year that asks for more deer tags because they have so many deer down there. He actually took me by the hand and showed me where to go to shoot some does down there because they could not kill enough deer off their property down there. I mean, they have just a ton of deer down there. Their group last year shot over 30 deer during the rifle season, and I think they shot another 4 or 5 after the gun season. And he said on any evening, he said you could go out in the fields and see 40 or 50 deer. So that particular area, if you look at the map of Marathon County, they have dots on there where there's an ag tag thing. It looks like you dumped the whole pepper shaker out right down in the southeast corner of Marathon County, probably within about a 10 or 15 mile an hour or mile area. So they need to kill them down there. Now, one of the problems that our CDAC is trying to address, and we don't have it yet as a tool in the box, is the fact that up in Landon, there are very few deer. You get up even farther, towards the county line, there's very few. You get into even over in the northwest part of the county, there's a lot less deer. If you get down at Mead Wildlife area, you may have a lot more deer down there. Southeast corner, for sure, you have a ton more deer. And we can only do it as far as county-wide. So one of the things that shows you that everybody that's on this council, one of the things they're stressing, or that they're on the up and up, is that they're stressing they want to be able to cut this county in half. At least in half, if not in 4. They figure if they can maybe possibly get it, and it's been tossed around a little bit by the big game department and the Conservation Congress to give us that tool to split the county. They just haven't offered it yet. I thought this year they would.
I think you're supposed to come out with some sort of decision on that in April.
Okay.
So, one way or another, we'll see.
But that was one of the big complaints before, is that the county was split into basically 4 zones, and they didn't manage them separately.
Well, what the problem was is that the big complaint on it was people were complaining about the boundaries. Okay, I got the Wolf River as a boundary, or I got...
So what's going to change?
Yeah, well, the only thing is it made it worse. Now, if you go in the meat area where Marathon County and Portage County come together down there, you can be standing out in the middle of a blueberry bog. You don't know if you're in Marathon County here or if you're in Portage County here. So the boundary thing never really accomplished anything. It just made it worse. Before, it was actually set up by southeast corner of Marathon County as primarily agriculture.
But I mean, they never managed it differently. They managed it still as...
No, they did manage it differently because they managed it by deer per square acre is what they did. Well,
Right.
that's what they showed us anyway. And now what they have to do is they have to go deer per square acre in a whole county. Well, how do you do that? Yes.
Isn't it deer per square mile?
Per square mile.
Actually, it's per square mile of habitat.
And of habitat types especially. That's not for just the whole thing. So, they had different rates there for different areas of the county, and now you have to do it all at once. So that's why they want to get it split.
What is the sentiment between landowners and the public land? Because I'm hearing, boy, the landowners, you're really hoarding a lot of deer. You got a lot of deer out there. I have to mention that there's an awful lot of landowners that are doing a hell of a job feeding deer and keeping deer populations up because of the way they're managing.
And that's absolutely right. And that's why you get very few complaints about the amount of deer being seen on private land versus what you're getting on public land. Now, nobody's seen enough deer compared to what it was like in the 70s and 80s. You know, everybody talks, we used to go out and see 100 deer a season myself. I would see 100 deer during the season. I'm lucky now if I see 5 or 6 deer a season. I went from a different place to, changed my hunting area, which probably has something to do with it. We just don't have the deer that we had back then either.
Why don't we have
The biggest problem was the fallen tags, and those two.
Well, and is anybody speaking to the fact that there's so many seasons, and the deer season goes until, the first week of January, and there's a holiday hunt, and there's this antlerless hunt, and the crossbows just add a whole nother dimension to harvesting and filling your tag, which, archery, if you just look at archery, the archery season was set up years ago as a primitive weapons season. And you had 3 months basically to try and fill your tag. And when I started, if you filled your tag with a recurve bow, whether it was a doe or a spike or whatever, it was something to be proud of. Now the harvesting methods are so effective that you're just killing more deer. There's less deer, but you look at the kill numbers. The kill numbers are still quite even with what they've been through the years. So all these seasons and all these antlerless seasons, and whether it's youth hunts or antlerless tags or holiday hunts, we just keep killing more deer, and the predators have increased as well. So there's a reason why you're seeing less deer. And I would challenge the 70s and go more 80s into middle 2000s where there was a lot of deer, and then they increased the tags. They were giving free tags, especially in Maritime County and the antlerless areas, and people killed a lot of deer. So there's a reason why there's less deer, is because we're very effective at killing them now.
Yeah, and that's been, everyone that comes to the meeting says the same thing. Well, the question I have to that is, how are you going to stop that? Can you get the legislature to say, okay, we're going to take the archery season, we're going to make it shorter? Which they're actually, if you look in this year's book, there's a question in there this year to extend the archery season to the end of January. Now, it's not for this area, it's for the southern part of the state where they do have a ton of deer down there. And you can't tell me they don't, because I hunted turkeys down there. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I could drive by every field out there and see 30 to 40 deer. No, that's just in the field. So.
Well, to answer your question, yes, you can. And you can do that by managing the state of Wisconsin like Wyoming manages its elk herd or mule deer herd. They've got that many deer in southern Wisconsin, let them hunt till January.
But they do that there. But if you want to start talking about Marathon County, you want to start cutting back, tell the people, okay, we can't have the antlerless on, or we've got to make sure that we have a lot less tags available. And there's been some suggestions to have one tag, one buck tag, not one for archery and one for bow or one for gun, or to cut back on a 1 buck tag, through the whole year. These are all things that are brought up. I don't know if it's the big game department or the legislature that doesn't want to do it, but Marathon County has been pretty stringent on what we're doing here in Marathon County. We're saying that we want to increase the herd. The actions to me show that we want to that we want to maintain, but the actions are showing that we want to increase.
So what do you see as the changes that have been made positively? What are the specific hard changes that have been made for Marathon County?
Marathon County, I see them cutting back on antlerless tags. That's the big thing right there. When you go 0 on public lands, as far as the bonus tags, I thought that was a pretty big step. There seems to be even a push to try to get more harvest on private lands. That's not going to happen because the people that have their own private lands are going to shoot what they want to shoot. And basically...
So what do you see as the biggest need for Marathon County? The biggest single need for Marathon County?
The biggest need for Marathon County is to split the county into at least 2 different zones, possibly 3 different zones. Maybe even 4. That would be great. Yes.
Mike, I had long conversations about this, and we've talked about it in the past, about splitting Marathon County being the biggest county in the state and the fact that we do have some real distinctly different habitat situations. His response is that we need to deal with this more as a hotspot situation. The problem I have with that, as you point out, if we give 1 million tags in a unit to say, okay, this is a hotspot, we're going to give out all these tags, and nobody buys them because it's all private land, we haven't accomplished anything. So I hope this committee gets farther with this because I know where the opposition is coming from, and his intentions are good. He wants to make this work the way he...
Who's he?
He's a gentleman on the Natural Resources Board. He's very involved in the development of the CDAC.
Oh, okay, all right.
And he believes that that type of issue can be handled as a hotspot. I think that he asked what's good. I think what's good is that the counties are, getting to be able to kind of set their own policy. The risk I see of that is some counties where, the hunters are in a minority, and then we get some real problems. But there are some benefits to it. But that splitting the county thing, it's going to be a fight to get it done.
Well, going back to when we, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, when it wasn't part of the reason for bringing down the herd is because of damage to habitat.
That was part of it.
I mean, not only agriculture, but also, like you mentioned, the meat and stuff like that. Wasn't that part of the reason, and did that get out of hand, or?
Well, it got out of hand because everybody started expecting more and more. You remember what it used to be like when it was 4 people to get 1 tag?
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't unusual. Well, then pretty soon it got to be, okay, now we're going to give out a tag that's going to be either a buck or a doe tag. And that seemed to, oh yeah, well, that's great. Now if I don't get a chance at a buck, at least I can get a deer for me. Well, then it became, okay, now we're going to be starting to give out these bonus tags. Now we're going to start selling extra tags. The DNR saw that they could do more and more and more to try and stop or slow down the population growth. And I don't think it was working as well as what they planned. So they kept trying to raise the kill, raise the kill, raise the kill, and eventually, through the 90s into the early 2000s, then it started to catch on. There was guys going out with 6 tags in their pocket. We're going to shoot everything we can, and that's, to me, I still think that's has a lot to do with the population dropping. The predator thing, without a doubt. There are a lot more predators on the landscape. I'm a hound hunter. When I first started hunting with hounds, we hunted fox because sometimes it would be only 4 or 5 times a winter you could find a coyote track. Now, I could shoot an arrow from almost any place in the county and have it drop on a coyote track. And bears, when I was a kid, if you saw a bear in the area, everybody in town ran over that area to try and see it. Well, it's not unusual now in Marathon County to put out 5 baits and have 6 bears on half of the baits. So there's a little bit of everything that's taken a piece out of it. There's more bobcats now. All of these things are brought up at every one of the meetings there too. But that splitting the county is still one of the big things that we need to get done, and we're hoping that it will get done.
Has it been brought up that when this generation here no longer hunts, you're going to be in serious trouble?
It hasn't been brought up, but we all know it.
Big time.
Yeah.
You can't, if you go in the woods with a kid, like I've been trying to debate if I should take a youngster along this leprosy, I don't know if I'm doing or not. But if I take him out there and sit there for 3 days and he sees absolutely nothing, the chance of that kid hunting ourselves, he's going back to his little computer in his room.
We usually get between probably 3 and I think the highest was 17 people that came to voice their opinions at our CDAC meetings. And I would say at least 50 to 75% of the people say exactly what you say is, you take the kid out, the kid's not seeing any deer, how are you going to get him back out there again? And they're absolutely right. And I'll be quite honest too, and everybody else in here can search your soul a little bit. Years ago, we didn't just climb in that damn tree stand and sit there all day. And I still believe that has a lot to do with the fact that deer no longer move. Like I said, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else in this room.
With private land now, it's hard to make targets.
And there's the other thing too, is everybody wants the deer, the private landowners want the deer there, they don't want them crossing the fence. How many places do you see the fence line here, and you see the box stand on this side, and you see the box stand on this side? You know why they have them there? Because they don't want that deer from my property getting across onto his property. When back into even into the 80s, crossing fence lines wasn't a big deal. Now, they don't even want you looking across the fence line.
Going back before Dr. Deere, and we would go to our deer meetings, and we're arguing about deer numbers, the DNR would say, well, what we really need is we need larger units. And if you remember, and you can say I'm wrong, but I can remember when they wanted like about 11 or 12 units in the whole state. You know, and then Dr. Deere came along, and now we got the county-wide, and our county's talking the same way. They want to split it up. Why didn't we just leave it where the hell it was?
The reason they wanted bigger units was because they get more data. That's basically all it is. It's a scientific method of getting more data and being able to make decisions on larger pieces of data. If you're going to go by a township, and you look at the data from the amount of deer that are shot out of here, and it happens to be the township where Glandon is, and then you look at what the kill is in that particular area, the DNR biologist doesn't have much for data at all to figure out what he wants to do there. So that was the reason between that. The reason for going to the county became a political process. You know, that wasn't biologists that wanted to do that. The DNR didn't want to do that themselves, I'll guarantee you that.
No, but this data thing, to me, it's ridiculous. So now they got this whole thing, well, we got an average of this. Well, here you got all these millions deer here, and not up here you got the same thing. Well, the data told them there wasn't deer there, you know, before. You can't manage a deer, you know, they'd like to manage it as a whole state. Well, you can't do that.
You also have to look at the biologist outlook on it, though. How is he going to determine what he's going to do without the data? Is he going to listen to you? Is he going to listen to this guy over here? Is he going to listen to this guy that owns, 600 acres over here? So he's got to have some type of data to work with. So you're putting a little bit too much blame on him, but the problem is that the DNR in total was not listening to the people. That's how the CDAC got started in the first place, is now we have something being determined by the people who are on these committees, and they also get input from people. Talking about the preliminary and the final quotas here. I'll get into that in just a second, but the people actually have a chance to give their opinion on it, whether or not the council members listen to it. Ours in Marathon County do.
Well, the thing about getting data, we used to have biologists that went out into the field. They were out there every day. Like in the winter time, if the deer were having a tough time, they would come to our conservation club up there and say, hey, we got to go out here and start cutting some brush and stuff for these deer. Or they would start a timber sales in there or something. Now the biologists, even if you got a biologist, they sit in the office. It's all these friggin' numbers all the time. Get out in the field and look. They should know what's going on out there. I mean, the average guy, we go out there, we don't see any tracks, and they say, well, you got all kinds of deer. Well, you're nuts, but if you got a lot of tracks out there, there's some deer around.
Yeah, I've owned the same piece of land for 25 years. I've hunted with the same group for 25 years. I'm hunting with the little kids that they brought out 25 years ago. Now they're bringing their little kids out. The populations of the deer in our area have changed dramatically. We go out there and we have 18 tags, meaning 18 hunters. We drive, and we're lucky if we get 7 deer, building bucks combined. Back in the 90s, I'd see 20 deer on one drive. Where have all the deer gone?
I'm a firm believer in the fact that not only have the predators taken some of that, but the 6 tags in your pocket did that. And they don't come back immediately. What we heard this year just at our CDAC meeting that we had on the CWD, we went around the table after the meeting and talked to everyone, and the consensus there seems to be that, okay, to come up a little bit. So I'm not sure what the vote is going to be this year, what the biologist is going to present, but anyway, it looks like it's coming up, but it's not going to be overnight.
So we see bear, we see coyotes, and this year I saw a wolf when I was going. I didn't see many deer.
Yeah, that's not, and That's a common theme.
Yeah,
And you
and
think
most of the people around us, you know, neighbors get together and stuff. I'm not covering a large area. I hunt Taylor County, I'm up against the Blackbird. And we've got probably about 550 acres that we hunt. And, you know, the deer just seem to have disappeared. Yeah.
Mike, in addition to what Mike is saying there, and what you're saying, when they gave out all those free tags and they just disseminated the herd, everybody thinks, okay, now if they quit that, in 2-3 years with all the fawn birth, it's going to be back. Ain't going to happen. Because the predators are that much more, they're looking for that much more, and the deer just are not going to recover. Gary and I talked about that earlier. It's going to take not 2-3 years, it's going to take 10-12 years before you get back to that nice rise where we were before they gave all the tags. So it's not an overnight thing.
Well, the other thing too is the logging that they used to be doing every winter and taking trees for pulp and stuff like that isn't happening anymore because they don't need the pulp for the paper.
Oh, you're right, absolutely wrong on that.
I am.
The paper mills are gobbling that pulp up as fast as they can. Right now, the prices on pulp is ridiculous, so high. Marcell and I serve on a county advisory committee to the county forestry department. Over and over and over and over, every time we have a meeting, they start talking about the county does the logging on their timber sales. That the price that the paper mills are paying for the pulp right now, they cannot economically compete because the prices for pulp is so high. Everything that's being put up is getting bought up.
Hey, nobody's pulping this winter. I with a whole bunch of loggers, and pulp is down at the lowest price in like 6 years.
Well, one of the problems about pulp in this winter is the rain, too. They can't get the woods to do it.
They've cut contracts, paper mills have cut contracts, and stopped them from logging. I've seen one logging truck on a highway since January 1st.
Well, I know that they're logging.
You could be right, but they're telling me right now it's the lowest it's been. I've got a friend that's got a heart problem. He says it's the best year ever for him to have a heart problem because nobody's cutting wood.
Oh, well,
So that's interesting. That's interesting, but that's completely the opposite of all the loggers I've talked to. I've seen one logging truck with a load of logs this winter.
It's not been that way in America.
Well, if you come over by me, you'd be surprised of the wood that's piled on Highway 64 and
That's where I am.
Langley County. You don't think those piles are?
It's not going anywhere.
Okay, but
no one's buying
it's cut.
They've stopped
Okay,
accepting wood.
Okay.
Do you think the method of pulping has changed? You're getting more efficient there,
Without adults, they can go through 40 acres 10 times.
but they're not leaving the tops like they used to. They're
Well,
utilizing more.
they're actually utilizing tops now too.
Yes,
But not very often. The problem is there's no market for tops.
Yeah, but there's no tops for deer to eat either.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, we just took 40 acres, and the other day I walked out there, 29 deer were feeding in the tops. That's what we saw, the 29. Was there more? Could have been.
Yeah, Mike.
I think the answer to his question about where can all the deer go, there's no question that we shot. I mean, yeah, there's some other factors, but then we get to the point where Marcell talked about, you know, you can't build a herd if you don't have something to start with. So nothing is still nothing. So it's going to take a while. The biggest concern I have is the CDACs, the DNR, everybody has all kinds of tools in your toolbox to reduce the herd, but I never hear about tools to increase the herd. It's always, you know, what can we do in that regard?
Well, we could cut back on the seasons if we could talk the legislators into doing that. I'm not sure if that's going to be something that's easily done. But let me get back here until I get through my presentation anyway. Okay, let's go back to how Marathon County CDAC works. We meet once every 3 years to determine increase, decrease, or maintain. Now, how do we do that? Well, we do that is with, some of the counties will have extra season, holiday hunts, stuff like that. And earn a buck is on the horizon, not in this area. I'm sure you'll never see earn a buck here in the next 10 years, if ever again. But southern counties, Waupaca County, the big hoorah they had over there last year. What Marathon County does is they adjust the tags and stuff. Now, we have 2 meetings every spring. One is in March, one is in April. The The first meeting is to determine the preliminaries. Okay, this is okay. We're going to say, okay, this is our preliminary recommendation. Here's how many antlerless tags we want to have in Marathon County. This many for public, this many for private. This is what we're going to do as far as any additional seasons. Marathon County hasn't done anything with anything other than just the quotas, just the amount of antlerless tags. They come up with a recommendation there. At the end of the meeting, that gets sent out to the big game department. That's put all together on the CDAC website for the DNR. Every county is going to have a recommendation on there. From April 3rd until April 13th, you can go online. Anybody that wants to can submit their comments on Marathon County, Lincoln County, whatever you want, for whatever county you want there. This is what you think they should do. You don't want to do. You want to have less predators, more predators. I mean, any comment you want, it goes from April 3rd till April 13th. Each county will then get all of the pertinent information, all of the comments from that are attached to their county. So whatever the comments are for Marathon County, we're going to get a printout of that. We're having another meeting in April, and that's when we give the final recommendation. Now, you asked before, does the DNR listen to stuff? The last couple of years, they haven't changed one single recommendation from what just antlerless season. You know, and you can tell how well that went over. I think we had over a couple hundred, I don't know how many hundred people there were that showed up for their final one, and they finally shot that down. Had that gone to the DNR board and there was 500 people that sent comments to the DNR board or actually showed up and testified to the DNR board, it probably wouldn't have gotten through. So they would maybe change something like that. And as a public citizen, you can show up at any DNR board meeting. You get your 3 or 15 minutes. I remember what the exact amount is on, but you get a certain 3 minutes. Okay, you get 3 minutes there to address the board with whatever you feel are your concerns there. You have to have it registered. Pardon? Yeah.
You have to pre-register.
Pre-register, and it's probably what, a couple weeks before.
Usually Friday before.
Yeah. So that's another option you have. And I'll tell you what, if Lincoln County shows up with 10 guys and says, we don't feel that the Lincoln County CDAC is addressing our concerns, you very well may get some type of response from the board. The board has done stuff like this before. One of the things that I can remember exactly was that there was when they instituted and this is off topic a little bit, but it just shows you how they work a little bit. When they instituted the captive wildlife rules, one of the things that was done is they deleted the hound training in coyote pens. And there were coyote pens. The DNR people that were there testified against it in the hearings and stuff. And it didn't seem to get anywhere at all until the Wisconsin Wildlife Federation went to the DNR board and said, hey, wait a second, you boys supported hunting with dogs, not necessarily just hounds or bird dogs and stuff. How come you're ruling against them? And the DNR board actually turned around and said to the DNR, you're going to put this back in where it was before, you're going to straighten this out, and it got done that way. Just by one guy showing up from the Wisconsin Wildlife Federation, which is a big outfit. But testifying in front of the board can sometimes get their attention. So that's another option that you have if you're not satisfied with your CDAC. Okay, once we get through with the final recommendation, it goes to the DNR board. The DNR board either accepts it, which they have done totally across there, or they reject it. But I don't anticipate that changing unless something really gets off the wall here. Public comments can be submitted online, or if you want to write me a letter, I'm listed on the website. My name and my address, my phone number is on there. One thing I do not do is don't call me up and say, I want more deer in Marathon County and I want you to vote that way, because I'm not going to accept that. I'll accept a written letter, public comments that go on online, we get that, or I'll tell you, give me your name and number, I'll tell you when the meeting is, come to the meeting, your comments will be heard at the meeting. But I'm not going to listen to 50 guys call me up and give me a 10 or 15 minute tirade about what they feel deer should be, and I'm supposed to write this all down. That's not going to work. But I'll give you when the meeting is, come to the meeting, you get your 3 minutes. And I'm pretty loose on the 3-minute mark. I know Marcell sometimes starts to nudge me a little bit, you know. And it's actually supposed to be set up so that you have a 3-minute comment period, and that's it. I don't run the meeting that way. I'm sure that a lot of the Conservation Congress leadership would not like the way I run the meeting, because I allow a a lot more discussion probably than would be at a lot of other meetings. Once you get through with the public comment period, the public's supposed to just sit there and be quiet or possibly ask a question or two. I let it get pretty loose there. There's a lot of back and forth between our councilors and the public that's represented there at the meeting. So I make sure that everybody gets heard. One of the biggest things, the reason that the CDAC was formed in the first place, how many went to the year 2000 meeting? Remember that years ago? What happened to all of the information there? It went into a black hole somewhere and it was never seen again. That's probably one of the biggest reasons that this thing has been formed to begin with. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh, the two dates for the meetings here are March 23rd, which is a Thursday evening. That's for the preliminary one. And April 19th is going to be for the final recommendation. The comment period online, again, is April 3rd to 13th. If you don't get it in before then, you can write it up, send it to me. My address is there. If need, Marcell can give you my address. We're on several different committees that we serve on together. The terms will be up this year. It's a 3-year term. So after the spring one, when the fall comes up, we'll be voting again this fall, and I don't have any dates on the meeting yet. Again, this fall we're going to be voting on increase, decrease, or maintain, and the people that are in those particular councilor seats, their terms are going to be up. They'll have to reapply just like anyone else. So if anyone ever wants to apply, go ahead.
The 3-year term, going way back, and Marcell remembers this, George Meyer remembers, we argued quotas for each game management unit every year. And we went on like that. We worked it out every year, and then it finally got to where they said, well, this is just too much work for us. We don't want the hassle. We're going to go to a 3-year plan. So they went to a 3-year plan. Now we've developed the CDACs, and they say, well, we should just do this 3 years. I mean, we have situations, and Maritime County is a good example. We've had an expansion of the wolf population that's affected our deer herd. That doesn't happen in 3-year cycles. Is there any effort to be able to go to a 1-year review as opposed to a 3-year?
I haven't heard anything about that, and I think probably the biggest reason is they're afraid that if you should all of a sudden have a real poor rifle season, maybe we get socked in with snow. Remember the year that we got so much snow on the opening weekend that they actually opened up an extra season afterwards? We get something like that, that would make up such a big mess out of what we had done before. And this way they give it 3 years to see, are we getting any better? Are we getting any worse? Are we going towards our goal? Is our goal being accomplished? And I think you have to have at least 2 or 3 years. Quite honestly, society has become, I want something now. How many people are willing to sit in a tree every day for the whole season? Now it's, well, I'm out, I'm heading for lunch, or yeah, we go out the whole big weekend. People want what they want it now, and I don't believe that we can actually do a good job with a deer herd by doing it on a 1 year. I would rather see us doing it in smaller areas, to try and split. I think it would be much more effective there. Because I know that the people that live down there in the southeast part of American County, especially the farmers down there, they would definitely like to see more deer shot down there. The people that are up in Glandon certainly don't want to see doe tags up there. Sure.
Well, I hunt in the southeast portion of Maritime County, and it's all private land. And it's interesting when you talk about landowners down there because they don't want you on their land, and I'm no different. The guy who's next to me, for years, his property was a deer mecca. There'd be 100 deer on his fields at night, whatever. All of a sudden, he had a change in attitude about deer, and he runs 20 beef cows and sells some cash crops. He went to the DNR and said, I got too many deer, come in. 30 deer a year, 30 tags a year are allocated to him to give to hunters to come in and shoot them, and they're all antlerless. And you know what happens when people are just shooting antlerless deer during the bow season? They're shooting buck fawns as well. Within 3 years, my deer sightings went down drastically, as did all the neighbors. And he did this for like 3 years in a row. So, you know, that whole landowner thing in that southeast portion, it's not like you're gonna go down there and knock on the door and get on, because they're not gonna let you on. But they want the deer shot. And this guy's getting so much a tag from the DNR because of his crop damage. So it's turned into a moneymaker for him.
That's the other problem with the ag tag. Well, they don't call it, but there's ag payments. Now, there's like about 3 or 4 different levels of ag tag where you only get paid like with a top level, but you have to show that you're killing them off too. If you're not shooting enough deer with what the biologist says, okay, they look at the damage that's done. How they determine what the damage is or what level you rise to, I don't know. But the higher the level, the closer you are to being paid, the more you have to allow tags to be handed out. Some of them, they don't have to hand the tags out. There's different levels. But you also can run into the same problem as far as what the guy was before. Now, the neighbor right next door, maybe he owns 500 acres and he wants every deer he can have to stay there. Maybe if he doesn't sell cash crops there, he wants deer there. Or the guy that decides, okay, I'm going to lease my property out, so I really want a lot of deer here. So you run into a problem there. There's no way that we can help that.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's not a thing we can have from the comments of the ag tags, especially the guy that there's one guy that keeps sending us stuff all the time. Him and his couple buddies bought 500 and some acres down there where the Bushman potato farms are down there. And of course, Bushmans happen to be issuing a bunch of ag tags, and these guys were putting all this money in, I think they were even putting fruit lots and stuff in, and they weren't seeing any deer because everything was getting killed off before season. The other thing that you kind of forget about too is, for them to get paid on some of that, they have to show that they killed a certain amount of deer. When they get close to that amount in the spring, some of those guys are handing out ag tags hand over fist, and now we're not just shooting the button bucks, we're shooting the bucks that have lost the horns. I'll show you how extensive it can get. Where we hunted down in Iowa County for turkeys, the last time that I went down there, when we showed up to hunt turkey, the guy said, well, where's your rifles? What are you talking about? Well, he said, I thought you guys would come down deer hunt too. He begged us to come back the following weekend. He said, we've got 4 different farms that I'll take you to. He said, you can shoot those off every one of them farms. He said, my brother will show you which ones to shoot so you don't shoot the nubbin bucks. At that time, between his farm and the adjoining farm, from bow season till rifle season, they killed 60 deer. From the rifle season to the end of the year, they killed another 60 deer. From the beginning of the year until turkey season, they had killed 30 more. And they were in danger of losing their crop payments because they didn't kill enough. And like I said, at the same time, you could see 30 to 40 deer in the field go out.
So, you know, that's the example you just gave is why this state can't manage the deer the same across the state.
Now, ag tags and stuff, that's already in law. Right. There's nothing you can do about that. There's quite a few things that the CDAC cannot address because it's in state law and it has to be changed. And trying to get it changed, there was a reason that it went in the first place. Trying to get it changed now is going to be pretty tough.
Where are the meetings?
Pardon?
Where are the meetings?
Oh, the meetings for the CDAC we hold at the Marathon County Forestry, or the batch of Marathon County offices where the Forestry Department is. It's on River Drive, 212 River Drive is the address on there. It's just down below the mall. When you come up across the bridge, across the river, you come up to the stoplights by the mall, turn to the right, go in, and that's the first. There's 2 long sets of buildings. One is 212, I think the other one is 210. It'll be at 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock. We sometimes stretch a little past 9 o'clock. Sometimes it'll get started till 7:05, depending on how quickly we can get people. The forestry department is right there. The county forester reserves and move forests. So the DNR.
Thank you very much, guys. It's very interesting. I mean, there's so many good questions here that these guys will listen to, and that's what we need. We need people to listen to them, show up to the spring meetings, and make sure that they're being held accountable to the spring meetings. Thank you very much.